Where? Yeah. There it is. We're about 5 minutes out from our first panel of the day, Understanding Live Streaming. 5 minutes out. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the this morning's discussion on understanding live streaming. Well, good afternoon, depending on where you're watching from. I'm Mike Nichols. I'm a business development manager at AbelCine. I'm based out of the New York office. In today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of live streaming and how the technology has evolved and what technology is available today, what the applications are for live streaming, and I'm going to let the experts certainly speak on it. To my right, we got Behnke from producer and founder of LiveX. To his right, Phil Gauthier from Haivision. Phil is the director of account management for Internet Media Services. And to his right, Ben Meadors from AbelCine, who works out of the Brooklyn location. You guys just want to talk a little bit about, give a little introduction about yourself and talk about what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so, thank you, AbelCine. Corey Behnke, I run LiveX. We're a best-of-breed live production and broadcast services company based out of New York City. I used to be head of production at livestream.com for 3 years. I've been building CDNs and platforms and players for the last 15, 16 years. And we have clients like Vox Media. I produce the New Year's Eve in Times Square webcasts. I've produced that for over 9 years. And happy to be here.
Good deal. I'm Phil Gauthier. I'm Director of Account Management for Haivision. Haivision is a provider of end-to-end solutions for IPTV video. So our company produces and creates hardware and software to help people get their video from one point to another. So we can do high-speed, low-latency delivery over the internet using our patented Secure Reliable Transport, or SRT. To show here, we're announcing our SRT Alliance. And it's now open source, which is amazing. We also have end-to-end solutions that are cloud-based for clients. So our company services several markets. We work a lot with federal governments around the world to use video delivery from the air and things like that. We also have the House of Worship market. We do a tremendous amount of work in the House of Worship market for live streaming from their premise to either multi-site campuses or to an online audience. And we also work in broadcast, obviously. So that's a little bit about Haivision.
I'm Ben Meadors from AbelCine. I'm the lead integration engineer for Abel, so I design everything from shared storage and asset management systems to live broadcast systems to live streaming systems like our 360 4K streaming Ozo flight pack, stuff like that.
So you could kind of say that a discussion on live stream that's being live streamed is, in the parlance of our times, a meta discussion. I want to talk about the evolution of it. Live streaming is still relatively a relatively new way to acquire content. So you guys have been in the live stream game for quite a while, and what have you seen from the technological development side from your beginning in the live stream game till now?
I think the biggest thing is hardware and software has kind of merged, and with the release of Aja cards, Blackmagic cards, PCI cards that are pretty much open and you can build your own systems, I think it's allowed for things like vMix and for software switchers like Livestream Studio to come out and kind of allow people. It's democratized the market. And in some ways, it's complicated too. And then last year, the biggest thing, obviously, is Facebook releasing the API. And I'm sure everybody watching this and anybody here has clients who are like, I got to get on Facebook. And so that's a huge, the multi-distribution of live streaming is really big. And I can talk about New Year's especially. There's been a huge shift in the marketplace for live streaming. And it's really important to get out to where everyone is.
True. The thing that we see from a technology standpoint is that the ability to stream and drop your cost of bandwidth is really finally turning the curve with HEVC being enabled in a lot of the encoders now. So that's the beauty of, because we're seeing 4K and we're seeing a lot of this 360 VR stuff, and it takes a lot of data to push that kind of video solution, or video signal. So using HEVC in the encoding piece really helps now. But the actual beauty of what we're doing over the internet is that it's a two-way dialogue now. So for our clients, when they say, well, what's the benefit of going online or streaming? It's two-way dialogue. You're actually able to truly engage with an audience now, whereas traditional over-the-air TV broadcast was, I got a lower third web address or URL or whatever, and I'm hoping that they're going to call or email us or go to the website. But that's the cool thing that we love with our clients, is that we're able to really engage or teach them how to build a metadata strategy around distribution. And like Corey said, there is a social media piece to that's huge now. We've got clients that are streaming to Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and to their online presence in their own site. So the strategy piece is very cool, because it does allow us to use the technology to fully engage an audience now, which is a lot of fun.
I think what's interesting is as these streaming services come into play, you can now, I think when Facebook Live first started, you could just use your phone. And then now you can stream just an RTMP stream. So you could use high-end cinema cameras and really have a production that looks amazing without spending a ton of money.
Yep.
And that's a big thing for people who can really then target their audience, which is very interesting.
But not only that, the big thing is, I remember, 4 years ago we would do like multi-$100,000 productions for major brands like Ford or Warner, and we'd be like, oh, this is amazing, everybody's going to watch it, we're going to put an embed on a site, and like they would spend $200,000 and 50 people would watch it. Right. It'd be like, where's our audience? And like we did a Kevin Hart stream for Nike, and it was no marketing. Kevin Hart, of course, one of the most popular comedians in the world. On his Facebook page, I think he has like 7 million people that follow him or like him. And we did an Uber pacer. So we had 2 cameras that were wireless, and some guy who's like, oh, I want to run the Boston Marathon. He like pushes an Uber pacer, and all of a sudden he gets Kevin Hart as his Uber pacer. And so that stream of us following him around, running with someone spontaneously, got 2.6 million views. Completely on Facebook, no marketing, no push, and it's insane. Like the distribution side of it has completely turned on its head.
The virality of being able to capture that audience so quickly is huge, and that's the other beauty of live streaming and the tools that are out there now, especially on an OVP, because there are so many analytics packages where you can actually look at the return on investment, check the engagement to see if you're truly getting engaged, and then the influencer piece is huge. I mean, if you want to see your Facebook streams really hit a high mark, if you can get influencers to comment during an event, that'll double or triple your viewing audience. So it's truly amazing. But if you look at for the first time last year, if you look at Q scores of Hollywood people or Q scores of on-screen talent, the first top 6 were all YouTube stars. They didn't come from Hollywood. So we've literally turned the paradigm corner here on live streaming, and it's no longer a novelty. It's here to stay. So it's been fun to see how this thing is really kind of growing so rapidly.
So along those lines, traditional broadcast had Nielsen ratings, and that was primarily the metrics that they used to determine, what's hitting and what's not. Especially as it relates to VR streaming, there's all these deep analytical metrics that are out there, heat signature readings, and where the viewer is looking. What other, if you're talking to a branded content company or somebody who else is interested in doing a live stream that is centered around a product that needs that sort of metric feedback, what's out there now beyond hits that you can talk about that is feedback to the client?
Well, one of the things we were actually working with HarperCollins right now on some would you rather, where you're voting in Facebook, and so Facebook has in their API where you can actually do vote tallies, and you can build it's not terribly difficult to develop. You don't need a developer, and you can actually use their API. So you're streaming the video, but you can have people vote as an overlay on top, and then you can see the tallies. So there's things that are coming from Facebook on their API that are pretty amazing on that side, and I'm sure Twitter will catch up soon on the analytics side to be able to engage your audience.
We work in a market that really is analytics driven, but they wouldn't tell you that, and that's the house of worship market. And what's so funny is that over the last 8 years, we would engage with a church, a ministry, and they would say, well, we can't live stream. The senior pastor doesn't think that they're going to stop coming to church, and they're just going to watch us online, and we're not going to get the giving and whatnot. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the two fastest growing churches in the U.S. all started as a heavy media presence first, and now they've grown to the two largest churches physically in the country. One's got 26 different locations, the other one has 17, but they started out, one of them was a 24/7 network, started as a media company. You walk into their building and it was nothing but skinny jeans and sneakers and skateboards. That was it. So yeah, it's now being able to engage, but if you've got a compelling content, you're going to see the analytics physically somewhere. You can engage them physically, pull them in, like Corey's talking about. But there are also all kinds of. Nielsen's into online analytics. Adobe's very heavy into it. Well, I'm not sure. There's hundreds out there, but you can see instantaneously the engagement. That's the beauty of live streaming. Google Analytics gives you real-time data as you're streaming something live. You can see where they're engaging from, how many people are launching players. So yeah, but you have to have a true strategy around the entire event, or that plan. If it's a year-long plan, you've got to have a strategy around that too, because there are so many different pieces to it. There's metadata. There's ways that you can do something follow-up wise, where we have got a client that says, as soon as we're done with our live stream, we want to take that same content, much like Facebook's doing, where you're done with the live, they flip it to a VOD, and then we have people that are creating a simulated live event afterwards, because they realize, we can reach people globally now instead of just the U.S. or just these time zones. So they're scheduling content to play back out and then trying to engage people in a simulated live event. So lots of different ways that you can engage to spread the word, build your brand, and get uplift.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, we touched on scale of streaming, but before we do that, I kind of also, maybe there's those of us, present company included, who might not be as educated on the different types of streaming, whether or not it's IP-based or more traditionally broadcast-based. Can we just kind of talk about the different scales of streaming as it relates to a single camera position and user sending directly to the web that they're encoding in their basement, or a multi-camera truck kind of live stream?
Well, there's not. It's funny. This gap has bridged, so it's getting narrower and narrower, where a lot of your heavy broadcasters are using a lot of the same tools that your guy in the basement that's streaming to his blog is using. It's really fascinating that way. I think the big thing is, the big thing is primary and backup streams. So typically your broadcaster is going to send a primary and a backup to the player, whereas your guy in the basement is going to be like, oh, I'm just going to stream to my phone, or I'm just going to have this encoder, this small encoder that's going to do it. What we're seeing with DPs, which is really fascinating, we're actually doing the Tribeca Film Festival, and we're working with a company, Man with a Cam, which is a company that provides cameras. There's this ease where they're like, hey, I know the camera, and I can give you copper, I can give you my SDI output, and can you just switch feeds for me? And so what we're doing is we're training them to be like, no, this is actually easier than you think. Like, you can put this box right here, you can give it all the feeds, you can put your Facebook credentials in, you can put your Twitter credentials in, and you're streaming and you're going. So I think the problem is that people think it's more complicated than it is. But then as it gets bigger, and you're doing bigger things, it does get more complicated.
True, Mike. The other thing I would say is that when you get into live streaming, you have to think of yourself more than just a blogger now, and you as a micro broadcaster. And so we say, look, if you're going to start streaming on a consistent basis, you've got to consider yourself a micro broadcaster and think like one, which means planning. And as Corey said, you've got to have redundancy. You should have multiple encoders. You should be using a content delivery network, a CDN. Haivision's partners with several of them. The biggest is Akamai, which is what we really run most of our clients on Akamai's network, which is the largest in the world. But Akamai's got Deem, where they can actually pull in a primary and a backup, and then their system will actually flip stream somewhere if they have any kind of issues. So we've got some nice technology there. But if you're going to be a broadcaster or a micro broadcaster, you really need to have separate feeds, separate primary and backup encoders on separate ISPs, on separate power supplies. So you really have to think about the nature of the event and the impact of the event and where you're trying to go with that, and make sure you've got full redundancy. And then how you want to follow up with that afterwards.
And what's getting more complicated is that, so I want to say this, so New Year's Eve in Times Square, 2 years ago, the webcast got 3.6 million views. That was literally just an embed, and then 150 outlets, people.com, take the embed. Last year, we streamed to Facebook. Luckily, I pushed us to stream to Facebook because we actually lost viewers. Because we gained them back up on Facebook. So what's happening is that the market is segmenting, and you have to get to all of the networks. You can't just afford to have an embed or just go to Twitter or just go to Facebook. It's crazy. Like, our numbers we actually went from 3.6 to 4 million, but I had to make up about a 1.5 million by going to Facebook exclusively. So everybody said, no, I'm not going to go to your embed. I'm just going to stay on my network. I'm in Facebook. I want my Facebook feed, and that's all I want. Like, this is on YouTube right now. And so what that does is the multi-transcoding and all of the things that are more complicated. So, hey, I just want to send my encoder and have a primary and a backup and send that to the cloud. And there's a lot of people in South Hall that'll be like, yeah, I can get you to the cloud and then out. And live streaming is just a different game because you're like, well, wait, do you own that box in the cloud? Like Haivision's a company where you're actually end to end. You own all the pieces. You're offloading to the CDN, but you're not just some company that's like, oh yeah, I'll take this. So there's all these companies that like work with Facebook that have a Facebook API, and they're like, yeah, just send your stream to us, our little startup, and then we'll send it everywhere. And you're like, well, how is this working? And so you're in a bind because you're like, well, wait, do I have 10 encoders, so I have 5 platforms plus my backups? Or do I send this to the cloud, and what can I trust? And so the market is in this place where it's like there's companies that are going to be winners and losers in that delivery system.
Yeah, we're going to see some change coming up. But the fun thing about some of the OVPs that are out there is it's a multiple syndication model. So you can actually push one stream out, and then if there's an RSS feed service available or something of that nature, you can typically publish out to a mobile app, a Roku channel, Apple TV channel, various OTT deliveries, and the web. But it's interesting because you've got to pay attention to where we are with codecs and everything else happening in the cloud. We talked early on about HEVC and the ability to stream, say, a 4K stream using half the bandwidth using this new codec. The other thing that we're looking at is HLS is really is the standard now, and Chrome is going to be killing Flash off by the end of the year. So a lot of our clients are like, we're struggling with a certain player or whatever, and it's because we're seeing the browsers finally shifting over to HLS. I mean, the iPhone came out 10 years ago, and they kicked Flash to the curb, and it's slowly been going away ever since. So it's dying a very slow death.
Yeah, you can't stream 4K on Flash. Like it's virtually impossible.
No. But Facebook is still on Flash, so you have to be able to deliver to multiple endpoints and have the technology available too.
And there's a danger now with the platforms. They've become monopolistic. So, like, for instance, we produced the product launch for DJI last year. And iJustine came on the stage, and she hadn't cleared her music. So Facebook shut the stream down. A major launch, And so now we actually were on the phone with them this morning, and we're like, hey, we need to make sure we whitelist all of our music. And so there's things like that where YouTube, like if we played a Michael Jackson song right now on this show, right, YouTube would shut us down in 2 seconds. So there's things like that you really have to think about.
Oh, no, we've got clearance on the whole catalog, so feel free.
You going to moonwalk here, Corey? All right. Yeah, that's true. There are algorithms, but that are being run that are checking for that, and so you've got to be cautious of that in the social sphere because they're not going to. It's not the Wild West. They're going to shut you down. So there's things you got to be careful.
Yeah,
with.
I put up a clip on, just to touch on that. I put a clip on YouTube, and very, very far in the distance there was a Metallica song playing, and it got pulled off. So you want to talk? You said HLS, and there may be a more of us, maybe more of us here that aren't educated on all the different types of streaming options, RTMP, HLS. You want to kind of just break it down a little more fundamentally?
I mean, the way that I do it, I try to do it from a layman's point of view. What's interesting is, so you have RTMP, right? So RTMP is basically an H.264 video stream and typically an AAC audio stream, which we all know, those codecs, well, most of us, right? And the funny thing about RTMP is like one of the oldest technologies on the internet, and it's not going anywhere. Like, it is your ingest path. Like, as much as people are going to HLS. So people talk about HLS is really about an iPhone playing HLS. That's what an iPhone wants to play. So HLS is, so typically what you do in the whatever path you have an ingest server, you have some kind of transcoding server, and then you have edge servers that actually give the content out to distribute it to your view. That's the most simplistic way to kind of explain how live streaming works across the paths. What he's saying about HLS is everyone's watching on their phone. 80% of your viewers, 70 to 82% of all your viewers are going to watch on a mobile phone. 50 to 60% of those are going to be an Apple product, and that's going to be HLS, which you have to deliver to. So if you only deliver RTMP and then that gives you Flash, most of your iPhones can't view it. Now, most of the platforms have figured it out, like Facebook and what have you. But by choosing your provider, it's very important that you know what devices it can be played on.
Exactly, yeah. Because HLS stands for HTTP live streaming. That's all that is. And that is typically flashless delivery. Akamai as a CDN has a product called Stream Packaging where they will ingest an RTMP stream and they deal with all that distribution through their manifest system on the cloud side. So all you have to know is how to get your stream up to them, and then they deal with the distribution points, and then it's just up to your player and how you embed the player and what kind of player you're using, whether it's Video.js or FlowPlay, whatever. That'll render that particular stream out onto the devices that you're wanting to play back on, whether it's an app or whatever.
The majority of people are going to stream to Facebook. That's just the world we're living in. And then you don't have to worry about any of this.
Yeah,
as long as you can get it to
that's
Facebook.
True. I would agree with that statement, but Facebook is not an end-all, be-all.
Nope.
I mean, it's
100%.
It's certainly the 100-pound gorilla, but at the end of the day, it's like going to the mall versus going home or to your office. And there's a distraction factor in Facebook, and if you've got very compelling content, you're really trying to engage an audience, you've got to have pretty compelling content because there's so many, squirrel things going on in Facebook that, people get distracted quickly. I was talking to a client last week, and he said, we had 29,000 people watch our stream on Sunday. I'm like, that's great. What was your retention rate? He goes, they were average watching about 33 seconds, and it's a 1-hour event. So you've got to kind of, look at the details, and if you know how to look at the data, you can see good things in there, and Facebook and YouTube are going to give you all the data you need, but just know the difference between, engagement and if it's being effective, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it. I was checking my feed. What did you say?
Word.
Yeah, talking about Facebook as the gorilla in the room, it's tempting as someone who would be delivering content to say, well, I could just go Facebook Live and that's it. But if there's any reason for there to be heavy redundancy, if there's someone who's broadcasting something that's got some weight behind it, why would they? For what reasons would they engage you to sort of support that and to engage hardware by Haivision to make it so that it's redundant and fail safe?
Fail safe, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a million reasons. And to your point, it depends on what is my risk appetite as the brand, right? How important is it for this stream to go out? So there's a couple reasons. Like if you want a paywall, you don't want to use Facebook. If you want really, really good analytics, you're probably not going to use Facebook. If you want to worry about content ID and you're worried about your content getting shut down, you're going to use other distribution platforms. And especially if you have a website and you really want to push people to that, you really want to have your own embed and push people to that. And registration gates. A lot of my clients, they come to me and they're like, hey, people are coming to my conference and only 100 people are going to watch the stream, and I want to know who they are because I need the lead gen. Facebook's not going to give you that. There's plenty of reasons that places like Livestream, Haivision, Ustream are going to have businesses for a very, very long time.
Right. Good point, Corey. And that's a great question, Mike. By the way, but what we say is, look, if you're going to use Facebook, definitely it's part of an overall strategy, but it should not be your only strategy because it's you want to have your own presence on the web that you're driving people to, where you can control the engagement, and you really can't that much on Facebook. So maybe you use a portion of the event, and then at the end of that event, the guy looks in the camera and says, "You want to join us to see this added bonus content? You want to come over here to this URL?" They float the URL into Facebook or post it, and boom. And now you're putting people in a controlled environment where you can really build your brand and engage them in a way that you've got the control. So Facebook and YouTube definitely have a place in your overall strategy for live streaming, but in the end, you really do want to have your own office or location on the web where you're controlling it, whether it's an app or an in-browser experience where you can engage them in either a chat, or you can push different content to them for calls to action after the event, during the event, whatever. So
I also would say people usually come to us because they're like, Facebook changes the game every day. Yeah. And so for instance, they have an API now, but you can stream RTMP or you can use their API depending on your software. Well, let's say you want to geofence. So you want to be able to say, I want to stream from Facebook and I'm in Las Vegas. Well, you can't geofence with the API. You can only geofence with the RTMP. Yeah. Also, if you want ads, they have a new ad where you can have a sponsor live. So AbelCine could have Sony as a sponsor, and in the Facebook feed it could say sponsored by Sony. Well, you can't use that unless you use the RTMP versus the API. So they change the game so much. And also, we're at the Teradek booth and we're doing a show from 1:30 to 3:30, and I was telling Teradek, who doesn't stream all the time, I'm like, guys, we need to cut this up in chunks, because Facebook's algorithm actually benefits you if you cut your video up in chunks and you stream 15 minutes before. Yep. And so there's all these little tricks that typically people come to us for things like that.
Right. Yeah. We had a client yesterday we were talking to in our booth. They were like, we want to rebroadcast a live event because the Facebook algorithm is going to kick me higher up in the results and help my stats if we can perform this function through, but it's got to be a live stream. It can't be an on-demand video. So again, it is part of an overall strategy, but at the end of the day, you want to look at the overall piece and just say, how does this fit into what I want to accomplish and where I want to take the brand and how I want to control my online experience.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Last year, Facebook paid, I think, $6 million or something to certain content creators, and they stopped those payments this year. And so Kevin Hart was one of them, Vox Media was one of them, there were a bunch of brands. And so you can't, to your point, you have to have a longer strategy for where your video is going to be. As always has been the case. If you follow just one platform, you're done.
So it's correct to say that if I were to do a live stream, I couldn't send it to multiple outlets at the same time?
Absolutely, you can.
You can.
Yes,
you can.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
And
you should. Facebook has a rule. Here's a really funny one. This is the things that fascinate me. So they have a rule where if you stream to Facebook, you can't simulcast, except in the case of your own page. But if you really look at the definition of simulcast, if you use a separate encoder, that's not simulcasting. So that's how we get around the rules. So it's like they have these rules that and they've shut people down. We simulcasted a brand where we were going, Livestream actually has a feature where you can click Facebook, but you have to agree to their terms to do it. But there's tons of things. There's cloud-based systems. There's you can have multiple encoders. It just kind of depends on how much hardware you have and what your risk appetite is.
Yeah, I don't want to get too technical, but if you've got the bandwidth at the event location on premise, we've got a multi-channel kilobyte baseband encoder, our KB encoders. It's got 4 channels, so we can take one ingest, or we can take a clean and dirty feed, however you want to present it, and then you can output to Facebook, YouTube, your web page, all simultaneously at the same time, as long as you get the upload bandwidth. And then, of course, you can do transport streaming to the cloud, and you can break it out in the cloud, distribute it from there, too. So a couple different ways to skin that cat.
Which bandwidth is still an issue in some places,
point.
Right? So some people are like, hey, I only have 5 megabits. So then you have to kind of choose the cloud-based transcoding system.
Yeah, and planning ahead for that's really important, right? Because a 1080 stream is 4 to 6 megabits per second. So you have to make sure you have that, and maybe even make sure you have some sort of QoS in place to make sure, like we're doing here. Actually, we have some QoS in place to make sure our stream is there. Yeah,
you don't want Wi-Fi on the same pipe that you're streaming on. Yeah.
Also,
really
please
important.
don't live stream with Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
I did it, and I sweated bullets every time I've done it, and I'm not telling you what I did.
Or cellular.
No.
Yeah.
Well, as I say that, but we use bonded cellular for a lot of events, and it works okay.
Yeah.
But we have redundancy in the bonding, and that's a whole other conversation.
That's Cirque du Soleil on the web, man. That's without a net, brother.
But to his point, bandwidth is not the only thing, right? It's because most encoding, and not to get too in the weeds, because most encoding uses TCP as opposed to UDP.
Right.
The further you are away from the server where you're ultimately ingesting will affect your how your stream looks and how the latency, and just if you're able to do it. I was in New Zealand doing a Fox broadcast for Planet of the Apes, and because we were having to go, the ingest server was in New York. Even though we had 150 megabit upload speed, we had to get Akamai ingest server, which is one of the great things about Akamai and the CDNs, an ingest server in New Zealand. So bandwidth is not the only story when it comes to upload.
We've actually got a client that travels the globe for different events, and their headquarters are in Miami, where they've got 6 of our 4-channel encoders there. And so they carry some of our hardware with them. It's a backpack-sized deal. They can so once they get on location and wherever they are in Europe or wherever, as long as they've got 5 to 10 megs, they send a transport stream to their kilobyte boxes in Miami, and from there they can stream out to Facebook, YouTube, their mobile app, web experience in multi-language, because they're streaming sometimes in 5 to 6 different languages too. So those are things you got to think about. Closed captioning is important now for live streaming, as is multilingual.
And to your closed captioning, we just did an Oracle code stream, and we figured out live captioning for Oracle.
Congratulations.
It's not as easy.
No.
It's not easy at all, and it's crazy. And there's a lot.
He's not kidding. It's not.
It is not.
And there's companies that say they do it, and they're actually vaporware, and they don't do it. So be very careful with that.
But there are some that are best practices that are here at the show, and they've got the encoders for the closed captioning that will embed the closed captioning into the live HDSDI feed to your encoder. And then most encoders, broadcast solution encoders, will take closed captioning in a 608, 708 package, send it on through with the stream, and then the players are going to identify that and present that to the viewer in the player.
Yeah, so. and closed captioning is going to only increase because the government and education are forcing it, and so it's going to become a standard.
Yeah.
Well, we use an encoder, and what's great about it is we're able to have the person who types 2,000 words a minute is listening to an audio feed somewhere in the world.
Right.
And so we send a low latency audio feed to them, and then they actually send the data back to the encoder, and the encoder puts it on the player live. It works really well, actually.
It does. Yep. It's amazing we can do that globally. It really is. So
let's talk a little bit about the new emerging live stream tech of sending VR to the web. There's if you go over to the North Hall, there seems like every new camera that's coming out that's a spherical camera is doing some form of live stream. And here we have Ozo Live, which takes VR and 360 video and puts it more into a traditional broadcast pipeline. But there are other camera systems that are doing it internally, where they're encoding in camera and sending out, I guess, an RTMP stream from the camera, which Ozo can do also. But so can we talk about the differences between those types of delivery methods?
I mean, the biggest issue for VR right now that's stopping streaming from looking good is the fact that 1080 is kind of like the baseline, and it looks like garbage. Yeah. I kind of call it SDVR because it looks like standard def used to look when you were streaming 500 kilobits per second, and it just looked like garbage, and you did a transition, and it was all macro blocky, and you're just like, 4K and waiting for HEVC, waiting for that standard has delayed. I call 2017 NAB, are we there yet?
Yeah.
I feel like I've been waiting for 3 or 4 years for an HEVC 4K streaming solution. They're real, they exist, but it's just been a while, and that's what's delayed it. And right now also is you only have really, unless you're going to make your own player, which most people don't want to do. I say make your own player, and most people run really fast. So you have YouTube and you have Facebook, and they're 1080, right? And so that's
YouTube has a beta 4K, but it doesn't look great, and you need a ton of bandwidth. So it's really difficult to do it.
Because they don't have the HEVC side really figured out. Right?
Yeah, it seems there's a little bit of a reluctance to adopt HEVC as the codec for the player side, and why?
It's because people that make a lot more money than anybody here, that run all the major companies that run this whole trade show, haven't worked it out.
Well, HEVC is only functioning right now in one browser, and that's the Edge browser. So it's adoption rates. It's like we were meeting with a client this morning before I came over, and they're 1080 HD, right? And they're streaming 1080, 4 meg stream is the highest, and a cascade down from there. So he said, have you looked at 4K? He goes, well, right now it doesn't make sense for us because we're looking at probably, based on cameras, the switcher upgrades, everything else, probably a $6 million investment just in 4K. And if I look at the public adoption rates right now, it just doesn't make sense for us. Most of our viewers are on handheld devices. Why would I want to be spending $6 million to send 4K to an iPad? It just didn't. It's tough to justify.
There's to that point. There's another issue with the standards of like, are we going to do copper in 4K or are we going to go completely IP? Yeah. And the unification of that idea has not really gelled. Right. And so you have Blackmagic, who has 12 GSDI, which is actually an amazing product. Like, I love that transport system. But no one else has adopted 12 GSDI, even though it's like a real standard now. Yeah. And everybody's going to IP, but they haven't decided. Is it AIMS? Is it NDI? What is it, right?
Yeah, HEVC will be used for the public if you're at an event like in New Zealand, like Corey's talking about, and you're going to do a cloud transcode. Then you would take your 4K, but still you're looking at what is the experience for the end user at the end of the day, because you can send a 4K stream on 5 megs, and it's going to give you a 10 meg type of quality. Hit a cloud transcoder, bust it up into multi-bit rate, send it out to your players, but you're really not gaining a lot on the viewing side. I mean, Facebook has driven a lot of this technology. If we look back, just 6 years ago, Facebook was text. Then they went from text to text and images. They're from text to images to video, and now it's live video. And they've been investing in VR for the last 2 years now. So
and they have a really big.
Yeah, it's a big push
in
because
the game. They have Oculus.
Didn't they announce some new camera that you can build on your own? Like, there's some GitHub thing you can build. I think it's like 4 or 5 cameras in a circle. They've released the plans for free.
Like GoPro or something?
It's not GoPros.
Well, and that's what I'm waiting for. Like, I came to this show being like, okay, show me HEVC and show me a camera. The camera platform, right? That's not $60,000. That's like 8 to 12 that streams, And there's a lot of good products out there. Teradek Sphere is a great product, but it all uses things that already exist. It's like nobody's really figured out 4K streaming for VR.
Yeah. There'll be somebody that'll come up with some standards, or
It's going to happen. We're going to say next year, and then next year we're going to be sitting here and being like 2019.
Told you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issue stems from the fact that even 4K streaming for spherical video, you think 4K, I think it's going to be sharp and crisp, but even that at that resolution, VR streaming, it's not quite.
You see the potential.
Yeah.
Like oh, this could be cool.
Yeah.
If you pay attention, Mike, if you really pay attention to your encode and you start with, it's the garbage in, garbage out is never more true for live streaming. And if you have good quality coming to the encoder, you've got good, clean bandwidth that's controlled, that can't be encroached upon off your switch, and you bring a good 1080 feed there, you've got good production, a good switcher, that can be sent over a good CDN who's got a good SLA, 5.9s, and then you've got a quality player that's going to pull the content in. We've got a client that streams 24/7 live off of an encoder, 1080. I was watching their content on a 4K display in our office off of an Apple TV, the latest Apple TV version, and they don't really need 4K. It's so crisp and so clear. The technology is there now to give an exceptional experience as far as 4K and clarity. You look at what they're doing at the big golf tournament in East Georgia, if you know what I'm talking about. They're doing some interesting things with 4K now, but it's adoption rates. When are the monitors going to get sub $1,000 for a 4K display?
And when is the bandwidth in the U.S. going to be such a play? Because we're going to get back to the thing where you had a 1.5 HD stream and it starts getting stuttery, and my client would be like, "Why is it stuttering?" And I'm like, "Because your edge is stuttering because you don't have the bandwidth." Yeah. And that's what's going to happen with 4K. It's going to be the same thing. Yeah. Why is it stuttering? Doesn't look as good. I mean, people get caught up, like the SMPTE 292 standard, the 720p 1080i standard. People get so caught up in like that. It's like if we just focus right now in the next couple years on trying to do 1080p 30 or 60 streaming, that is going to increase the quality of everything we do, because it's something in streaming that we don't do as much, right?
Yeah. Yep. Without HEVC. I mean, we can do it now with RTMP and stream packaging. So, yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's, 4K is such a buzzword amongst, even beyond 6K and 8K amongst, standard 2D traditional capture. But, in talking with broadcasters and broadcast service companies, the 4K it's a hefty investment on
really
their side to reorganize their infrastructure to be able to pipe up 4K. So I think that's one of the things that's kind of holding broadcast level 4K spherical video distribution at bay, and I think that's why a lot of the manufacturers are moving towards IP-based delivery for their single camera systems. But I think we'll do one more topic, and then we'll kind of open it up to questions, because
Sure.
you guys look like you're busting, ready to ask all these interesting questions. So we're going to open that up.
I want to say one thing on that, and that's, a lot of people that are watching this are probably DPs, amazing ARRI Alexa users and Red users, and there's something where you work with a lot of DPs, and they're always like, well, my camera can record 4K. And I'm like, what's the output? And like, HDMI. I'm like, okay, well,
right, yeah.
I can only go so far with that.
Yeah.
I have to convert it, and there's all these problems. And so I'm constantly convincing clients that 1080p 30, like, hey, let's record raw 4K and give you the VOD and the post awesomeness, but let's actually just output in 1080 and do the stream right.
Yeah.
There's this huge confusion in the marketplace, because live is like 1.5% of the entire market. Most people shoot, they edit, they post it, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of confusion of like the output of cameras, and that is really where the rubber hits the road of like, that's why we're not doing 4K, because cameras don't output 4K.
Right. Yep.
So, aside from bandwidth, what are the real big challenges in setting up a live stream on a scale that's bigger than just a single position to YouTube or Facebook? What are some of the challenges now? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to in terms of the evolution of the technology?
I'm looking forward to multi-transcoding that's really reliable, so I can get it out to multiple platforms. The big things that you were saying about what do I need to do, what is the next step, the big thing is bandwidth. What do I have on site? Is port 80 open? Are all my ports open? Do I have an IT person? I mean, all the stupid stuff of like, do I have the IT person on speed dial on a Sunday at 6 p.m.,
Right. Yeah. Do I have support from a provider who's got 24/7 support? Because there are no more time zones. It's a global thing. The other thing that we're seeing two other things that are really rapidly happening. HTTPS. Everybody wants to get their site on HTTPS. That will impact every element going to that page. So if you've got an embedded player, it's got to be HTTPS compatible, the streams, the media, everything. So don't think just adding the S is all you have to do. That's not the case. And APIs is where it's all going. Facebook's opened theirs up. Any OVP worth of salt now is offering a full-blown API, because people want to be able to syndicate to multiple platforms and not have to worry about having to create projects and drag and drop. There are plenty of development guys out there now that can take an API, a REST API, run a JavaScript, a cron job, use JSON, CJSON, whatever it is, and all those other acronyms that they have in that web page, and they want to be able to deliver the content when they want to the organization, and then from there they can pull stats. Those stats can tell them how effective the media is, the distribution is, and from there they can continue to plan accordingly. So APIs are also going to be big too.
And as we move into the cloud, I think everybody experienced the AWS outage 2 weeks ago. That happened for 1 hour. If your stream was happening in that hour, you were effed.
Ouch.
Like, you were screwed. And so it's very important if you go to cloud to really understand, what provider am I going to? Oh, Amazon, they never go down. And I'm not crapping on Amazon. They're amazing. AWS is actually one of the most amazing cloud platforms. But like, you have to think about redundancy, not just on your local level, but you have to think about it on your on-premise level and on your colo level and on your network side.
Sure. And that's interesting because, Corey, we kind of come full circle now, because we were talking about, well, YouTube and Facebook are everything we need to do. But if the stream goes down on Facebook, just call them. They'll help you out. Right? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm being a little facetious here, but, so that's why OVPs are always going to have a place, because you've got to have, somebody's going to want to call you. I mean, when we were watching TV, if my signal from NBC went out, I didn't call NBC. I called my cable provider. Now you're a micro broadcaster. People know who you are. If they're not getting your stream, they're not calling your CDN. They're calling you.
Yep.
So you've got to think about these things from and you've got to train your viewer. We've got to retrain the public on how to view online content. And you know what? Here's what refreshing your browser will do. Here's what, making sure the Flash plugin works because you're running Windows Vista or whatever. I mean, we're still seeing Windows Vista and Windows NT in stats.
So basically, it's very important if you're doing a live stream to highly publicize your phone number.
No, your phone number. Yeah.
AbelCine support.
No. So, I guess, thank you. This was great. Do you guys have any questions you want to touch on? What's a CDN? What's RTMP? What's HTTPS? What is that? That's my question.
Oh, that's just a secure page.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's encrypted HTTP.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew that. I was just trying to stimulate the question asking
HTTPS.
process.
Basically, if your website you want your website to be secure, you have to invoke an SSL certificate with your web provider, your web host company. And so there are ways to do that, obviously. But yeah, once you have a secure site and it's HTTPS, everything that you're going to embed in that site is going to be secure technically. You'll see the padlock in the URL window, all right? But, and most people now are requiring that. Google is kind of leading the front there as well. We're even seeing nonprofits that are going HTTPS.
You're basically confirming that you are who you say you
Right,
are.
yeah. Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Good question, Mike.
You got a question? No? Yeah. He missed it. He was checking his
It'll
Facebook
be
feed.
available. It'll be available as a VOD asset later on YouTube. You can watch it at your leisure on any device you want.
So, guys, thank you for sticking around. You guys just want to, if anybody wants
Yeah.
to reach out, where can they find you? How do they find you? And
I'll be available after for questions, and livex.tv if you want to check us out.
And Haivision has a room over in the Renaissance across the street from the south entrance. So if you go all the way to the south entrance, cross the street to the Renaissance, second floor, we're in the 5-spot room, which is a Vegas thing, I guess. But we're there through Thursday, and we've got plenty of refreshments up there, and especially after 5 if you want to show up. So we'll be up there, and we've got a host of engineers and architects. We've got our high gear labs up there. We're showing what we're developing for the future. We've got VR in there as well, and our HEVC encoder, and we've also announced that Secure Reliable Transport SRT Alliance with Wowza. So we are doing some fun things, and it's now open source, so we've got a lot of people that are coming by and with big smiles on their face because they like the ability to deliver video and packet loss low, so it's been great. But yeah, we're over in the Renaissance Hotel.
so,
Thank you.
congratulations. You're all live stream certified technicians. Be sure to pick up your certificate at the front desk on the way out. And thanks for coming. Oh, we got a question.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a great question.
So the question is, he has audio delays in his stream, but do you have it on the end, or do you see it before you send it out? Yeah. I don't know what platform you're using. Typically what we do is we'll test sync on the front end before we send to ingest, right? I'll do a clap test, I'll do a lip sync test, I'll make sure, and then I'll do an end-to-end. Depending on what platform you use, most platforms sync doesn't drift over time. But
Right. Depends. A lot of that tends to be either frame rate related or workflow related. You've got some sort of adapter in your workflow before you get to the encode position. It's very rare we see an encoder that's creating an AV sync issue, much less a CDN. It's typically 99.9% of the time when a client calls and says, my AV sync is out, we start backing up through the workflow from the switcher, and we'll find it there somewhere. And it's either there's a frame rate thing, or they've got a Mac that's shoving some iMag or graphics or a video into the stream, and after they come back to the live portion from that video, it's out of whack. So they've got a frame rate issue from that computer that's pushed that content to the switcher. So it's a workflow related issue.
Or another workflow issue is your audio mixer. A lot of people don't realize it might have a limiter or compressor in the audio mixer. So you'll be sending analog audio to the mixer. The mixer will be coming back out, and it's actually latent. So it'll be like 2 or 3 frames after. And so there's 2 ways to do that. One is turn the limiter and the compressor off, but you kind of need the limiter probably, or whatever processing you're putting on it. But the other thing to do is a lot of switcher software, so Livestream Studio does this, vMix does this, you can actually delay the video by frames. And so what's nice about that, and I think even TriCaster does that,
TriCaster's doing it, yeah.
And what's nice about that is like, I'm like, oh yeah, just turn the limiter or the process compressor. But the time you find it, a lot of times you're in the stream. So the ability to like delay video or audio in a computer switcher is really valuable.
Your question brought up something I did want to share real quick if we have time. That is, as you think of yourself as a micro broadcaster, you've got to think about separate audio for broadcast. You should have, if you're doing an event and you've got a front of house for a concert, you should have a separate audio control for your broadcast where you can control the delivery of that audio and it's of the quality that is expected. You should be miking your audience. There are lots of things around audio for a live stream that some people just don't even consider. So that's one of the points I'd like to make.
And yes, and to that, the key is end-to-end. What I like to think when I'm with a client is I like to think, okay, who is the super fan of this thing, whether it's a church or,
Concert,
DJI, concert, whatever.
Yep.
Who is the super fan, and how can I act as that client to see the end-to-end? So I'm always doing an end-to-end test where it's like, okay, let's stream, let's have someone talk, let's see it in the player.
Right.
Okay, let's see it on my mobile phone.
Right.
And just make sure like all the pieces as the super fan is like, yeah, this is good, this looks good,
Right.
this sounds good.
And test all the time. We do a live event for a client every May. We begin testing at their host sites. We have a live stream that runs 24/7. Their host sites start testing audio and video delivery in March for the event in May. So they get a URL and they say this is the testing window. We've got support available at this time. Make sure you test the stream and bandwidth. And if you've got any questions, give us a call. Test the player out. Here's the URLs you use. So test, and plan.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to release these guys back into the wild. And thank you for sticking around.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Just want to make a quick announcement, a reminder that we have an ARI tour coming up in 5 minutes. So please go to the front, and Paulo will be able to sign you up for that, and we'll head over to ARI. Thank you very much.